Hello and welcome to Tech 24 on France 24. I'm Brian Quinn. Coming up in this edition, cybersecurity in the medical field is a growing concern for your data and connected surgical devices. But what about the human mind? We'll talk to renowned cyber warfare expert and author Guy-Philippe Goldstein about the new frontiers of biohacking. And in Test 24, it's not embedded in your body yet, but the new Apple Watch is out and on wrists as wearable tech makes a comeback. Well, thanks for joining us. First, a cleaner, quieter alternative to diesel. The world's first hydrogen-powered trains are now rolling down the tracks in Germany. The low-noise, zero-emission trains are operating on a 100-kilometer line in Lower Saxony. It's a small but important step as Germany has struggled to reduce its carbon emissions in the transport sector. Well, for more on the story, we have France 24's in-house tech expert, Dhananjay Kadakar, here in the studio. Dan, thanks for being with us. Tell us more about the trains, who built them, what are they capable of?
Well, these trains are capable of reaching speeds up to 140 kilometers per hour and have an autonomy of 1,000 kilometers. They have been built by the French manufacturer Alstom, the makers of the high-speed TGV trains here in France.
Very nice. Well, can you explain to us, how does a hydrogen fuel cell that powers these trains, how does it work?
Well, that's right. These two hydrogen trains, they will be using, or they are using fuel cells. So a fuel cell essentially consists of two electrodes, one positively charged called anode and the other negatively charged called the cathode. So when hydrogen approaches the anode, the positively charged electrode, it gets stripped of its electrons. That's done by using metal like platinum, which is used in anode. So this electron is made to travel through an external circuit, and as it travels, the flow of electrons is electric current. So we get electric current, and this electric current then powers the electric motors, which in turn then moves the wheels and the train moves. While on the other hand, the proton or the hydrogen ion is made to pass through the electrolyte. It reaches the cathode. It again meets the electron, and with the oxygen from the air, you get a reaction in which you get pure water. So the exhaust is pure water, and the output is, in terms of useful energy, is electricity.
So these new trains, a bit reminiscent also of a French startup, which is also developing an ultra-fast train, also powered by hydrogen. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the project is called Space Train, and it is reminiscent of a similar project which took place in the 1960s, which was pioneered by the French engineer Jean Bertin. And in that, he used a cushion of air to propel a train. So that's what the startup is trying to replicate. So they are, as you mentioned, they're using hydrogen, so the fuel cells will be able to power the induction motor. But they also have another system that creates this cushion of air, which is like 1.5 millimeters thick. And because of low friction, and the only resistance the train has is the aerodynamic drag. And because of that, they will be able to reach speeds in the range of 700 kilometers per hour.
Next, internet-connected healthcare devices are now essential in many hospitals, aiding operations and improving patient care. But for hackers, they're becoming an ever more enticing target. Anything from hospital equipment to internet-connected pacemakers are at risk. Robert Sutton-Maddox has more on the threats posed by health hackers.
The role and handiwork of the surgeon is still essential in many hospitals, but more and more, delicate operations like this one on the brain of a young patient cannot happen without the help of machines. From the anesthetic to the medical equipment, all are monitored by sophisticated computer systems operated by a central server.
All this is for anesthesia. All the equipment here has recently been connected to central software for general anesthesia. The center allows us to keep the patient under sedation, with the injectors here verifying the drugs they're delivering.
Practically everything is driven by computers. The team also use a Wi-Fi network, helpful for operations, but vulnerable to hackers.
The risk, of course, is that the equipment can be used for bad purposes by people outside the hospital.
And that's exactly what happened 3 years ago in the United States.
Hostage situation.
Hackers took medical records hostage at this hospital in California and demanded a ransom for their return. Even worse, the authorities found out that morphine pumps could be remotely controlled by the hackers.
We're talking about tens of thousands of morphine pumps that have a security weakness, which leaves them open to cyber attack. We could have a scenario where morphine doses could be changed for 10, 20, 30,000 people.
Something that so far has never happened. Another medical instrument at risk is the pacemaker. It's a device that contains a wealth of medical information.
Surgeons can both monitor and modify the settings of the pacemaker without operating on people. Unfortunately, people with bad intentions could also change the settings.
It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but back in 2011, the then US Vice President Dick Cheney was advised to disconnect the external connection of his pacemaker to avoid a terrorist hacking. It is certainly possible. These researchers managed to hack a pacemaker placed inside this mannequin. More worrying though, thanks to the information gathered by the drone, they can melt the battery. In this demonstration, iron mesh was added to better show the pacemaker overheating. For these peaceful hackers, the goal is above all to alert manufacturers.
There have been quite a few publications, whether by researchers or even equipment manufacturers, who are just beginning to become aware of these security issues. I think they will integrate these anti-hacking measures as early as possible.
Attacks against connected devices and healthcare facilities happen almost every day. With their ultra-secure servers, this hospital takes things seriously. But nowhere is safe from hackers who are getting more and more daring.
Next, having an implanted device hacked is certainly enough to worry about, but a growing body of analysis points to even thornier issues as human minds become increasingly intertwined with technology. Our next guest is here to talk about just that. Guy-Philippe Goldstein is an author and cyber warfare expert. He joins us from the School of Economic Warfare in Paris. Guy-Philippe, thanks for being with us. Let's start with the current situation. Couldn't we say that the mind is already being hacked in a way through behavioral and or emotional stimuli on the internet?
Well, the hacking of mind has always existed. Wearing makeup is a way from people to seduce some other people and change their cognitive appeal. But what we see today is indeed a big wave of campaign on social network, which to a large extent has now been proven by recent studies. MIT studies have shown that when you're able to send negative, surprising information, those information are going to spread 10 to 20 times faster than, say, positive and non-surprising news. And what is basically negative and surprising news? This is fear. And actually, psychometric studies have shown that if you are able to shock, say, a right-wing moderate voter who has a low level of openness, traditional set view, but a good emotional stability, and shock that person with fear, then you're going to turn that person into someone with still a traditional set view, but actually a low level of emotional stability, which is the profile of a far-right voter. And here you go, you have explanation of how perhaps Trump and Cambridge Analytica managed to a large extent to sway the campaign in the US.
Well, we also seem to be moving ever closer to actual direct mind-machine interfaces. We've seen startups like Elon Musk's Neuralink teasing new breakthroughs recently. What do you think that will bring?
Well, to a large extent, we're already living with lots of those human-machine interface very close to us. Whenever I'm losing my memory, I'm taking my smartphone and I'm going on Wikipedia. What is very interesting here is actually all those tools that are going to help actually all the users to better perhaps control their emotions, the memory, and ultimately their personality, which may become a very important tool because in different jobs, in different functions, we may need to be more open to new ideas or to be more conscious and control our emotional stability. And all those elements, which are very core to us as the user of a human-machine interface, may be actually available for mankind very, very soon.
Hacking the personality, fascinating stuff. That's hacking the personality, fascinating stuff. That's author and cybersecurity expert Guy-Philippe Goldstein. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, that brings us to Test 24. Well, digital interfaces remain on the outside of our bodies for the time being. That brings us to this week's Tech 24. However, speaking of time, the new Apple Watch is out now. The Series 4 making a splash as wearable tech experiences a bit of a comeback. Dhananjay Kadalkar back on set. Dan, you've been putting the watch through its paces for a few days now. What do you think?
Well, the latest Apple Watch comes loaded with many features, including fall detection, walkie-talkie mode, but perhaps the most talked about function is its ability to measure the electrical activity of the heart, that is, to create electrocardiogram or ECG. This is done by using a dedicated app on the watch itself. It's done by using electrodes which are present at the back of the watch, and all you have to do is open the app, put your finger on this digital crown, and it will measure the electrical impulses, and you'll get an electrocardiogram which you can share with your doctor, and will also send alerts if it detects any anomalies in this electrocardiogram. The second function it is of measuring your heart rate, which is quite common to other watches, but it does this by using a technique called photoplethysmography, in which there are green LED lights that are constantly flashing, and the amount of this green light that is absorbed by the blood when the heart beats and in between beats determines your heart rate. So these are the two techniques that have been talked about.
So a big emphasis on health and fitness from the Apple side of things. You've also taken a look at a new French wearable tech watch called the Withings Steel Sport HR. How does it stack up?
Well, it's also a fitness and health tracking watch, so it also determines the number of kilometers you have run, the number of steps you have walked, and so on and so forth. But one of its most interesting features is the so-called VO2 max indicator, which essentially tells you your muscles and your heart's ability to convert oxygen into energy. So the higher the rating on this indicator, the more fit you are. So perhaps by going through this data, you'll be able to determine your fitness levels and maybe improve them as and when you want.
So a bit of gamification perhaps for getting in shape. I'll tell you, I could certainly use it. Thank you very much, Dan, for that. Well, that's it for this week's Tech 24. Thanks for watching. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, under #Tech24. See you next time.